Hello, welcome to the Bigger Truth Show. I am Scott McMahon, and um, I'm excited about this show. We've got a lot of information, and it's all just kind of. I'm going to do my best to keep it kind of simple, and we're going to start with some good news. We're going to get into some analysis of just kind of how I'm seeing the electoral map and how that's shaping up. And I think that there's a lot of good stuff going on, and I think we can win. I'm also going to get into some more of what Flynn is doing and what a lot of his followers are doing, which is really clearly getting in the way and showing themselves to be the enemies of Trump, and trying to actually prevent us from winning. And so this is, I've been talking about it for a long time. This is an insurgency um, within the not just the state parties, but within the conservative populist movement and within the conservative media landscape and all of that. So, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think we can do about that. So let us start right here. And again, this is my storefront, and biggertruth.myshopify.com is where you can go to get my merch. And we've got everything from hats to shirts to hoodies to cell phone cases. And, so you can check that out. That's one way to support me. Another way is just through my Substack, joining my Substack for $5 a month. I've got a lot in my archives, a lot of really good information about this infiltration into state parties and how some deep dive research on Mike Flynn and on his network. This is work that I've done, pretty much all of the work that I've done over the last 9 months. And it's just 9 months, just a couple days ago. All of my work over the last 9 months is on my Substack. And so you can get it there. This is something that I meant to get to on Monday, and I just didn't with everything else that we were covering. But this is a really big deal, and it has not been in, I haven't seen really any media here in Michigan cover this. The gentleman on the right here with Trump is the mayor of Hamtramck, Michigan. He is a Muslim. Hamtramck is a kind of a small town in Detroit and within Detroit. And it is the only all Muslim city council in the country. And he is a Democrat, has been a Democrat since he's been here, as far as I know. And this was a tweet that he posted endorsing President Trump. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, let me be clear so our expectations are realistic. President Trump and I may not agree on everything, but I know he is a man of principles. Though it's looking good, he may or may not win the election and be the 47th president of the United States. But I believe he is the right choice for this critical time. I'll not regret my decision no matter what the outcome would be, and I'm ready to face the consequences." And that is a really good point, because within his community, I'm sure there are consequences for this. And so this was a very courageous stand for him to take. And I think we should definitely applaud him for that. And he says, "For this and many other reasons, I announce my support and endorsement for the former and hopefully the next president of the United States, Donald Trump." He says, "Now let the caravan begin its journey. This is just the starting point." And so I think that this is really, really a big deal. And I shared Rolla Maki. She is one of the vice chairs for the Michigan State Republican Party. And I really like Rolla. I've talked to her several times, and she's very, very much involved in the Muslim American community in the Detroit area. And so there is a lot going on right now within that community as far as movement towards Republicans, and it's been going on for the last couple of years. And there's just a growing support for Donald Trump and for the Republican Party within the Muslim community, which is a really big deal. And especially here in Michigan, where there are hundreds of thousands of Muslim American voters, and they're important. And that's something that Christina Caramo was really completely neglecting and rejecting. She really openly said that we're a Christian party, and there's no room for that. I think we're an American party, and I think we should embrace anyone from any religious belief system that agrees with our platform. And this is a political party; it's not a religious party, and we're going to get a lot more into that as we move along. So this is more, I'm kind of more along the good news. In the Washington Examiner, this was a couple days ago, I think it was earlier this week, maybe the end of last week, this story came out. The headline is Republicans 2024 Legal Army Guards Against a Repeat of Trump's Stolen Election Claims. And it goes on into, there are a lot of lawsuits going on right now that the RNC and state parties are engaged in that are good. Here in Michigan, Mike Bishop has come under fire for working with a supposedly bipartisan group that's really kind of a Democrat operation to supposedly fight election disinformation. And I think that was a mistake. I said that on Monday. I think it was a mistake for him to do that, but he did. And the reality is, as our state party legal counsel, he is representing, and I think even just this week, I think it was yesterday, there's some lawsuits that were filed that he is working on to help to secure our elections. And that's been an argument against him by the insurgents within our party that are really they're just spending their time behind their keyboards complaining rather than getting out and doing the hard work of trying to win this election. And but the point here is that good things are happening, and they really are trying to the lawsuits that are being filed are for the most part very rational. They're aimed at cleaning up our voter rolls, which really needs to be done, as I've talked about at length, and just improving our our transparency and our protections as far as how the elections are run. And so just really I'm praying that these are successful, and that we have as secure as possible an election as we can. And it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be fraud. There always has been. But I think that we can overcome it. I think we've got, and we have the Muslim American community coming our way. We've got the African American community coming our way. These are traditional, really huge strongholds. And even more so here in Michigan, if Republicans get all of their voters to come out, still wouldn't win the election. The same thing with Democrats. They don't have the numbers on their own. It's the independents that we need. We are an extremely swing state, and we need the independents in order to win here in Michigan. And a lot of those are union people. And there was a recent poll that 58% of the Teamsters union is supporting Trump, which is just enormous. I've never seen that. And that was a big part of the national convention, was courting the unions. And it was just, there's a lot of good things happening. And I would say even more so, even the election integrity people are now talking, and their followers are saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to vote. They're saying I'm going to vote only on election day, a lot of them. But I think more and more are saying, okay, we're going to vote early, and you can avoid the potential hassles and whatever it is that, disruption that may be planned for the polling places by the bad guys on the left and the bad guys within our midst. And because there's both. And so we can avoid all that by voting early, and you vote in person. You don't need to trust the post office. But I wouldn't, they're not trustworthy, especially with something as important as your ballot. But, you can bring it in person. There's 9 days of early voting. You can just hand deliver it, and it will be counted. So this I found very entertaining. This was a tweet from Ivan Raiklin, my good buddy, Ivan Raiklin. He called me his buddy. on on the next space. Not not in the most good-natured way, but he still called me his buddy. And so this tweet was fun. I just got Melanie hey, I get to catch you live for the first time in a while. Score. All right. I'm so glad you're here, Melanie. Thank you. And Ivan's he's sharing a tweet from Roseanne Barr saying, Elon, talk to Ivan Raiklin about this. We can save the union. Oh, Ivan, and I've addressed this at length. Ivan Raiklin has his plan that all hinges in his mind on getting the mother of all Twitter files, having Elon Musk release all of the private Twitter DMs from all the bad guys, and that's going to that evidence is going to have some sort of an instantaneous effect, bringing people to justice, and is going to result in his live swatting raids of deputized citizens, fully armed and acting like Captain America, and doing live swatting raids on federal judges. And even Ben Carson and Jared Kushner are on his list, just proving that he is the enemy of Trump. And who's not on his list, who really ought to be there, is General Flynn himself, and even Ivan Raiklin. But of course, they're not going to put themselves on the list. So he just said, I wonder who just DM'd me, indicating that Elon Musk had DM'd Ivan. And I shared this and said, I wonder how long before Elon realizes he's a Fed. I don't know that Ivan Raiklin is in fact a Fed, but he certainly is an instigator and a troublemaker. And I think that he's trying to take Elon and Trump down. And I'm sure he'll realize that very quickly. So let's get into, before we get into this, I want to share this right here. This is the 270towin.com. And I want to share just kind of what I'm seeing. I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it a little bit better. So this is the interactive electoral college map, and the 7 gray states here: Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. These are the swing states. And many say that there are 6 swing states, and they exclude Michigan because Michigan has pulled the worst of these states for Trump. And but the most recent polls that I've seen is that Michigan's about even, or positive. And so I think that that's a good thing. I have been talking to people. I just want to share just a little bit of. Yesterday I spent most of the day on the phone with people in other states, and just kind of want to share a little bit of what I've learned. I think that Arizona, from talking to a couple people in Arizona, there's certainly concern, but there is definitely more momentum. There's been a lot of concern about Shelby Bushes and all of them dissuading people from voting at all, and putting all their time and attention on hand counting ballots instead of getting out the vote, which is still the case. But the polls are looking really good in Arizona, and if people will really vote early. And I think what's key is the McCain voters, the people that Kari Lake worked so hard in Arizona to turn away in 2022. And it's looking to me like, or at least the people that I talk to, that whose opinion I trust, that they really believe that those groups are breaking pretty hard for Trump. They don't believe that Kari Lake's going to win, but they do believe that Trump is likely to win Arizona. So I'm going to put that in the red column, and that puts us right now. So before Arizona, we were at 219 Trump and 226 Democrats. So 270 is the magic number. Then if Georgia, I think, and this isn't really, so there was I'm gonna put Georgia for Trump. I think that there is a lot of momentum in the South in general for Trump. And I'm just of these, I think that Georgia is another one that is more likely. It's not really because of the hand counting that they did, which was really mischaracterized. So that they changed a lot and got a lot of publicity, that they're going to hand count all the ballots in every precinct statewide. And um, this is not a hand. This is not what it was presented as. It's not hand counting all the ballots to determine the outcome. It's just hand counting the number of ballots. So they're getting a number of all of the absentee and in-person ballots by, they want to get it by 8 p.m. And I think that's a pretty good thing. It's kind of weird that the left is so opposed to it. It's going to take some extra time and resources. They probably won't get it done by 8 p.m. But if we can know how many ballots there are before they start counting, I mean that would relieve a lot of anxiety over how many ballots they're going to be injecting into the whole system. And so I think that that is a good thing, that they're going to be counting all those ballots. I don't know that it's going to change anything. Um, I don't think that it's necessarily going to catch anything. It's not necessarily designed to catch anything, but it would make it a lot more difficult um, to inject ballots after the fact. So I think that's a good thing, and we'll see what happens. I think that election day, I there's gonna be delays. They're gonna do all kinds of things, especially where there's questionable secretaries of state. There's gonna be delays. It doesn't take much to cause delays and to interfere with the election, even if they're not committing fraud. North Carolina is an interesting story. So North Carolina, Mark Robinson there, and I talked to somebody who is a strong supporter of from another state of North Carolina, of Mark Robinson, who's running for governor in North Carolina. And he had some questionable remarks, but I don't that were attributed to him. I haven't looked deeply enough to know to have a strong opinion either way. Uh, there's he claims that he did not actually say those things. He lost 5 members uh, of his key campaign staff that just quit. Um, and there's a large group from another red state that's likely to go out to North Carolina to help Mark Robinson. They're 50-50 in North Carolina right now. I think that this is probably the low point. I mean, we're going to see October surprises, but I think that where we're at right now with this scandal with Mark Robinson is likely the low point. Trump was out there last week in North Carolina. He did not mention Mark Robinson, and which I understand he did in Arizona as well. He did not mention Kari Lake when he was last in Arizona, but yeah, I'm going to give North Carolina to Trump, and so that brings us to 262, and so that means that he needs one of the 3 Rust Belt states, and I don't know which one's most likely. I think it's probably Pennsylvania. Um, if there are, like I said, on Monday in Michigan, if Trump wins Michigan, there are polls or studies that show he's almost certain to win the presidency. And but I think of these 3, he's most likely to win Pennsylvania. Winning Nevada would not be enough. That would bring him to 268. And is it possible that he could win Virginia? He seems to be polling pretty far behind, and Northern Virginia is such a hot mess. So I think that of these, Pennsylvania is probably most likely, and it's possible that he could win all 3. But this kind of gives us, I think, pretty clear where we're at. I mean, the Rust Belt here, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, are just critically important. And so he wins Pennsylvania, it's all over. He's got it. Even if with Pennsylvania, that puts him at 287 here. So even if he doesn't get, if he misses any one of these other states, he's still in if he gets Pennsylvania. So that's just kind of this. I think that this is helpful to look at that. There's a lot of analysis out there, but this is kind of the way that I've been looking at it. I hope that's helpful to you. So now let's I want to look at some of the things that are going on that are clearly in the way. And we'll start with Flynn himself. And this video right here is, I want to give a hat tip to Jim Stewartson. And Jim Stewartson has been looking at Flynn and researching Flynn for some time. And I could not disagree with more about anything other than Flynn with Jim Stewartson. But I think that his research on Flynn is, for the most part, pretty good. And when it comes to Trump or anything else, I completely disagree with the guy. But he thinks that Trump's a agent of Putin and all kinds of, and he believes that Antifa is a figment of the imagination of the right. There are, all right, Joe, I see you're, I'm not sure what this link is, but I'll take a look at it later. So let's get right into this video.
Happen if they do succeed in taking President Donald J. Trump out. And that is an unimaginable scenario. And then, because the next part of that question was, who would be, what would happen? Who would be the candidate? What would be the process, right? Excuse me. Somebody just tried to turn his head into red mist. So not that long ago. So now we have another situation.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's so graphic and so gross. Melanie says that Vision Surreal. Jim Stewartson is not Vision Surreal. Vision Surreal is a different account, and Vision Surreal is a Democrat, but I've been communicating with him or her. I don't know who Vision Surreal actually is, but it seems to be a very level-headed researcher, and we've had some pretty sincere and friendly debates, the two of us. I like the person quite a bit. I think that they're a pretty clear thinker. They are still definitely a Democrat, but they're willing to concede, or at least consider, that Flynn is working against Trump and that Trump has actually been victimized by Flynn, which I think is an important, that's a key and crucial understanding. So, it's interesting how Flynn uses the most graphic possible language. He says Trump's head was almost turned into red mist. Like, that's an image that he's very clearly trying to put into someone in order to, to put into our heads in order to elicit an emotional response. And that's what this is. This is a psychological operation that Mike Flynn is engaged in right here. And this is an interesting study. He took this together. He cut, Jim Stewartson cut this together from a video that I watched most of that Flynn just put out last weekend. It's a weekly podcast called The Skiff, or Inside the Skiff, that just is Flynn sharing his thoughts. And the whole hour-long episode, I watched about the first half of it, and it's all like this. I mean, he's talking about assassination. Trump's going to be assassinated, and what's going to come. So here we go.
I think a lot of people on the left, they want to see Trump out of the way, and they've been trying since they took me out in the White House in 2017. Okay, for this fake lie Russiagate. So I just wanted to set the stage for that. BlackRock, and I'm speculating here. But the fact that both of these guys were in BlackRock commercials, somebody had to set them up, so they knew about these guys. And these guys, both of them, are seriously dangerous. I mean, how does he get the schedule? Is there somebody inside the campaign, or somebody around Trump? There are people out there, there are psychopaths out there that take it literally, and they start to put, into effect some measures to be able to have that, to basically to follow through what they're being told, what they believe they're being told to do. We want a fair outcome in our elections. I guarantee if we had a fair election, Trump would win, all 50 states.
Okay, so that right there is, I mean, it's a complete and total lie. There's no way there's no way that Trump would win Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, not Nevada, New York. There's no way that he would win those states. I mean, this is there are a lot of Democrat voters in those states. So, but they put that out there. They say that kind of thing to just convince people that our elections are hopelessly rigged, and that's exactly what he's trying to promote.
And then the real potential for us to see some type of domestic violence. I mean, that domestic violence, it will be caused by those on the left. So for everybody that watches this, and my thing is, we've got to be smart. We got to be peaceful going into our elections. We got to be really smart, because they have capabilities to basically incite, right? They can break out the Antifa again. A friend of mine sent me a picture of a load of bricks that is now next to some park in their town. It's like, what are these bricks doing there? Big.
And from what I can tell, that is a complete lie. That's an old picture from, who knows when, like the summer of 2020 or something. I don't think that there's any truth to that. So I'm going to go on, and you can just see there's a lot of projection going on there. It's just, there's a lot of emotional manipulation. So here's another talk that I thought was really interesting, that Jim Stewartson shared from, I think that this was just last week. It was sometime in the last week, where he's speaking to a John Birch Society meeting.
45 days, right? So if you've known this for decades, you know that there are conspiracies behind the scenes, and that's what makes them a conspiracy. In fact, your organization, John Birch Society, your organization reminds me of a song that many of you are too young to remember, maybe. And it's a song by Barbara Mandrell. I was country when country wasn't cool. Well, those of you in the John Birch Society, you believed in conspiracies when believing in conspiracies wasn't cool.
Okay, so the John Birch Society is it's very interesting how it fits in. I've got a friend in Arizona that did a big study on the John Birch Society there, and how a lot of the players, Mark Fincham and others, are members of the John Birch Society. And that's the case here in Michigan with the Disruptor Group, that a lot of them have ties to the John Birch Society. And I've seen that in a lot of the states. And so, it's just, I think this is just an interesting data point that Flynn is meeting at the John Birch Society. And I wish he would have sang, but he didn't. So let's go on to, okay, so let's look at some things that they're doing here. So this right here is a flyer for, it's called Get in the Fight. It's an event in Connecticut, and it's a summit and training, help end child exploitation and trafficking. This is put on by America's Future, and it says, a full day of training programs, get the facts. And of course, the headliner speakers are Laura Logan and the general himself, and include Linz Piper Loomis, Daniel Duval, Tina Baz, Richard Petoskey, and Jared Saldusky. I'm not too familiar with the last two, but the point of this whole thing is it's just more emotional manipulation. They're trying to ratchet up the temperature. And look at the date is October 4th and 5th, so 1 month before the election. How does this help? Flynn just said to the John Birch Society, we've got 45 days. How does this help 30 days before the election? How does this help Trump? How does this help Republicans? How does this help what he says our cause is? And Melanie says that she went to the Michigan one in December, so it was the same, by America's Future. And yeah, it really is, it's emotional manipulation, and they're just trying to ratchet up the temperature. That's what this is, and it's weird that they call it training. So this isn't just information that they're giving, it's actually training. And we're going to get more into that because there's more. All right. So this here is from Florida, and this is this is a video that apparently in Florida, there is the Republican Party of Florida, which is the state party. And then there's another organization called the Florida Republican Assembly that is a Flynn dominated organization. And they describe themselves as, first and foremost, a Judeo-Christian organization. So it's not they don't describe themselves as a political organization. They describe themselves as a Judeo-Christian organization. And I'm just going to let this little video speak for itself. This is what they're talking about. This is how to stop the fraud in their words.
Do elections matter? Absolutely. The history of elections and voting dates all the way back to ancient Greece, which is the home to the earliest form of democracy. Elections have a direct impact and shaping of a country's economy, social agendas, environmental policies, foreign policy, human rights, and your wallet, as well as holding elected officials accountable, and much more. One of the biggest threats to any republic and democracy is the lack of voter integrity, as well as failure to maintain current standards that protect the public from the bad guys. Let's explore the pros and cons, as well as the safest way to protect your vote in the upcoming election. Bank your vote. Very bad idea. Bank your vote broadcasts to the world you intend to vote. Electronic poll books are online, not secured. And
Okay, so says, bank your vote is a very bad idea. Bank your vote is how we win. Bank your vote is a really good idea. It lets the candidates know who's voted and who to spend their marketing dollars on, who to send mailers to, whose doors to knock on. If you've already voted and you voted early, then you should let your candidates know that you voted early. Bank your vote, tell them that you voted early so that they don't need to come to you. And is that information public? The only part of that information is public is that whether or not you are an AV voter. And they don't say publicly that you have voted until after the election and after your vote has been counted. But that's the case for everyone. Everyone who votes, that, whether you vote or not, you're on the voter rolls. So, if you don't vote, you're still on the voter rolls. It just shows that you're not affiliated or you're not registered or you don't vote. So, this isn't like they can steal your identity like they're putting out. This is just crazy.
your information can be easily accessed by the bad guys, making you vulnerable to identity theft. Plus, it gives the bad guys plenty lead time to calculate the shortfall difference and smuggle in counterfeit ballots that will cancel out your vote and steal the election.
There is absolutely zero evidence that that is true. Absolutely zero. Unless I was told in Oregon that they start counting the votes a week before election day, which is kind of crazy. So then the Secretary of State and the clerks theoretically have information that could potentially be shared with members of their own party or NGOs that are affiliated with their own party. And that is a really bad thing. That's terrible. But in most states and in Florida, that doesn't happen. So they're promoting this in Florida, sharing complete and total lies and these are lies that are consistent with the Flynn network. Here in Michigan, Mike Lindell is forefront of this whole idea that if you vote early, you're telling the bad guys how many votes they need to steal. And there's no evidence of that at all. It's just not true.
Swamp the vote or early vote. Another bad idea.
Okay, and swamp the vote those words are from Trump. SwampTheVoteUSA.com. It was 100% Trump's idea. So this is the Florida Republican Assembly who claims to be for Trump, and they're saying swamping the vote or early voting is a bad idea.
Swamp or early vote cannot outrun or outpace artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence systems have become so advanced that they now exceed human performance in tasks such as reading and math comprehension. Plus,
okay, I'm sorry if you believe this, you're just stupid. What is AI? So are they suggesting that AI somehow, if you vote early, AI does what? I don't even understand what they're saying. It doesn't even make any sense.
Early voting gives the bad guys plenty lead time to calculate the shortfall difference and smuggle in counterfeit ballots that will cancel out your vote and steal the election. Vote by mail. Worst idea. Vote by mail is a recipe for disaster, promotes cheating, and has no chain of custody. As a result, your ballot could easily get lost, changed, or canceled. Once again, it gives the bad guys with plenty lead time to calculate the shortfall difference and smuggle in counterfeit ballots that will cancel out your vote and steal the election. Secure your vote. Vote in person. The most secure way to protect your vote and your voice is to show up in person on Election Day. It will reduce the lead time drastically, making it very difficult for the bad guys to cheat and steal the election.
It's just I feel like I've lost IQ watching this. I'm sorry that I did this to you, but they're telling you that the only way to secure your vote is to vote on Election Day. This is exactly the same Flynn propaganda that Pat the Fed Colbeck puts out every single day. That Mike Lindell puts out every single day. It's the same stuff that Jovan Pulitzer is talking about, and it's garbage, is steaming hot garbage. And at the same time, the Lindell plan, and he's got this whole website and this whole thing talking about how this is the plan to save America and to save our election system. Their plan is to create disruption, delays on Election Day. So that is exactly what their plan is, and they're telling people to request an early ballot to go on Election Day. And if they say that you've already voted, then you whip out that ballot, you call the police, and you cause delays, there at the polling center, having the police come. The only outcome of this, what they're trying to do is this is an operation by the Florida Republican Assembly to disenfranchise Republican voters. Here they are proving that they are anti-Republicans. That is what this is. The Florida Republican Assembly should actually be called the Florida Anti-Republican Assembly, because they are working against Trump. They're working against Republicans, down ballot Republicans, and much more. It's just they are a part of it's the National Republican Florida Assembly or something like that. The Federal Republican Assembly. Is an organization of there's not a chapter in every state. I think there's about 20 states that have chapters, but the biggest one by far is in Florida, and it is a Flynn op. So they're huge Flynn fans, and they share this kind of garbage, which is exactly what it is. So similar lines to this is how they are infiltrating churches. And this is something that I haven't talked about really yet, but I found a video this morning that is, to me, it was just very shocking. It's on the Remnant Alliance, and it's on the longer side. I'm going to try to kind of pick through and get the nuggets out of it, but it shows us, they're telling us exactly what their plan is to infiltrate churches, to make churches, to steer the focus of the churches away from the gospel and into politics, to make the churches into local political activist organizations that do the same thing that they're talking about, even, in this, whether it's this, this training right here, this, get in the fight training, or I shared it a few weeks ago, this ASIG, the Allied Special Intelligence Group, out of Florida, also, that's an America's Future thing, training people to be local activists and to get the bad guys, to identify the bad guys and neutralize the bad guys. And in looking at this is all they're trying to raise the temperature. They're trying to get people angry. They're trying to make people feel hopeless about our elections and about what's going on in our society. But they're specifically infiltrating churches. And Flynn spoke to a group through this organization called the Remnant Alliance, and that's who put together this video.
Co-founder of Citizens Defending Freedom, and Steve
Maxwell. He's the co-founder of it, And Citizens Defending Freedom is kind of the umbrella organization, and the subgroup is called the Remnant Alliance. And so they have this organization, the Remnant Alliance, which is targeting pastors. That's specifically what they're doing. And
Proud member of the Remnant Alliance. And today I want to share with you about the Remnant Alliance and the toolkit and process and how the Remnant Alliance works. So I first want to begin with thank you for the work you're doing in your community. Our pastors today are under tremendous stress like never before. The activities of our nation right now, the direction we're going, we all know is the wrong direction. A lot of it led by demonic activity. And these issues are winding up right in your church, in your youth departments, in your marriages, in your families, in your church. And we know that your plate is full. At the same time, as we look at our nation and we see the demise of our nation on the horizon, if things don't change, God's Word gives us a clear picture as to what His people should be doing to engage God in the process of saving a nation. 2 Chronicles 7:14 says it clearly. If our people, my people who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sin, and I'll heal their land. So it is
that's one of their favorite verses, by the way. So yeah, they're talking about, and they talk often within the Christian nationalism. They talk often about how the United States is a nation set apart, and there is nothing in the Bible to suggest that that is true. That the United States of America is a nation set apart. That is that is not a biblical belief, and I just but they use that in order to convince Christians that we need to fight to save this country. Now, I do agree. I'm fighting right now to save this country. I'm running for county commission. I'm not saying that Christians should not engage politically and fight to save this country. But what I am saying is that churches should not. Pastors should not. I strongly believe that pastors have a job that is very strictly defined by the Bible as shepherding their flock and preaching the Word of God, preaching the Bible, preaching the gospel, not preaching politics, not preaching current events, not preaching community activism, but preaching the gospel. It's very clear. That's what the Bible says that Christian pastors are to do, but they are trying to get them to do political activism.
Church, God's people, who must engage. What we have found in the 3 years with Citizens Defending Freedom is that many nefarious activities have been going on for quite some time. There's a lot of private NGOs, non-government organizations, that have infiltrated our entire infrastructure. And that has begun to permeate in our local communities. But the good news is we have churches all over this country. We have men and women in your churches who are ready to do whatever they need to do to help save the country.
And that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to get people to the place, whether it's in churches, whether it's through human trafficking things, whether it's through convincing people that we have no chance of winning an election because of election fraud, and that Trump would win all 50 states if not for election fraud. They're trying to radicalize people to the point of doing whatever they tell them to do, essentially. And what better thing for them than for it to be Christians? And that's really what they're after here.
But the mission is not to save America. The mission, in reality, is going back to what Christ told us to do in Matthew 28. The mission is to extend the kingdom of God. So I'm excited to share with you today a system that's been put in place to help you. All we need our pastors to do is make one decision. We need to stand in our communities for the righteousness of God.
Okay, so they're claiming that this is an evangelical thing, but there's nothing about sharing the gospel here. It's not, this is political activism is what he's talking about. The way that pastors are called to share the word of God is to actually preach the word of God. That is, preaching the Bible is the primary means of God's grace in the world for Christians. And there is, just like I opened this episode really celebrating that a Muslim mayor of Hamtramck has endorsed Trump, and that the Muslim community is turning towards the Republican Party. I think that is fantastic. And and I feel the same way about the Jewish community coming towards the Republican Party. I feel the same way about secular people, like just non-believers coming to the Republican Party. I think that that's all great, because the Republican Party, what it really ultimately stands for is the government limiting its own power. And when a government limits its own power, then we have the freedom to speak, to preach the gospel, to preach that, part of the gospel is confronting sin, our own first. And, this is what he's talking about is something that's completely different. I know that this is a hard sell. A lot of people, they have it in their head that I'm anti-Christian some way. I am absolutely not anti-Christian. But I am absolutely anti-Christian nationalism, because it's not Christian. And it is, it's what Christina Karamo was trying to do in pushing all of the Muslims out of the Republican Party. She was actively trying to do that. And, basically, acknowledge, in her view, there was no room in the Republican Party for anybody that's not a Christian. And that is absolutely wrong. And that's what these people advocate as they take over. In every case that I've talked to somebody in California earlier this week, and there's a church there that's had Mike Flynn out twice, and had Tita Peters, and had all of these people out there to their church, and they always give them money. And that's a big part of what they do. They get these pastors in, they get them to put forward all of their curricula and to become this political organization. And then they can bring in their speakers that are going to make a bunch of money, and it's all going to flow back to Citizens Defending Freedom and the Remnant Alliance, so that they can go out and they can bring more churches in and make more money from it. And so a lot of it is a grifting kind of thing. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, because as he gets into more specifics, it becomes, even to me, more shocking. So
online, so that they can support getting involved. Your church's name is not going to be in the papers. We just need our citizenry to get activated. So it begins, step one, with a pastor committing to go to a Liberty Pastors boot camp, or attending online, so that they can receive 20 to 30 hours of really great information. We go back to
i.e. indoctrination,
the purpose of the church, but then we also provide more information on what's going on in our nation. And when you leave that conference, you and your spouse, you're going to be very encouraged. You're going to meet a lot of other pastors who are in the same shoes you're in. They want to do something. They're cautious about doing something because of all the rules and regulations and the fear of maybe losing members and things like that. You're going to meet with other pastors, many of which are already on board, and great things are happening. And I'll share that at the end of this video. I'll share what's happening in my home church.
This is a military operation. This is a military operation against Christian pastors and against whole congregations. That is exactly what this is. And I think it is absolutely horrifying and terrifying. So this is 5 steps that they've got here laid out. And the first step is to get the pastor in front of 20 to 30 hours of indoctrination. They are experts. See this with the Reawaken tour. If you've been to a Reawaken tour, they are so good. They have it down to an absolute science, how to manipulate a crowd. They are so good at it. And even this video, there's a lot of, they've got manipulation, they put Bible into it, they do all kinds of things to make you think, okay, yeah, this is really good. And they have especially manipulation of Christians down to a science. When Mike Labadie, who I've studied in depth and talked about a lot in Michigan, when he first came to Michigan after having registered as a Democrat right before the 2016 election, it was only about 6 months later that he's in Michigan, and that was in California. And so then 6 months later, he's in Michigan as an activist within the Republican Party, and networking and telling people that he wanted to make the church more involved in politics. He was doing the same thing there that these people are doing. This is all the same mission. This is a military, industrial complex, Department of Defense sourced operation to mislead the church, to take control over the church.
So it begins with Liberty Pastors. When you go home, you'll have a toolkit of messages and materials that you can use behind the pulpit. But the main thing we ask a pastor to do is to find a layperson in your church that can begin a biblical citizenship ministry, basically. So the first thing that we do is once you get back home and you find that individual.
So it says here, if you can't read it, step number 1 is this Liberty Pastors curriculum that they're talking about. Step number 2 is begin teaching a 24/7 biblical worldview from your pulpit. So this isn't teaching the gospel. This is teaching what they say is a biblical worldview. And that biblical worldview, now I think it's important to have a biblical worldview, but I don't think that that's what should be preached from the pulpit. I think that only the Bible should be preached from the pulpit. And the reason why I think that is because that's what the Bible itself says. And the pastors in particular need to take their instruction only from the Bible when it comes to how to do their jobs. And anything, the Bible clearly tells us that the gospel plus anything is no longer the gospel. And this has to be confronted in Christian and biblical terms. That's why I'm trying to do this. If you have a pastor that has been sucked into this, I would suggest trying to confront them. But the reality is they're probably so brainwashed, because this is a brainwashing program. This is what this is. This is a very systematic, very deliberate program to brainwash first pastors, then they're, a group of, other elders or whatever they might be. They call them lay people within the church, non-pastors within the church, and then ultimately the entire congregation. They're trying to do exactly what I've been describing that they've been doing within state parties and what they did within the Florida Republican Assembly. And this is exactly what they're trying to do to whole churches. And let's keep going.
We encourage your church to go through Rick Green's Biblical Citizenship course. We have 2 versions. One is a short version, 5 45-minute sessions. The other is an 8-hour session. Our church went through this, and really it's going back to the history of our country and how the Christian faith was so important in the decision making, and even the documents that were signed to create our country. And once your members go through that course, they're going to be encouraged and they're going to be motivated, because at least for me, I realized, wow, I thought I knew my history, but I did not. And then I began to see how others, really the enemy, has come into our country in different ways and have systematically stripped away the founding principles of our nation. So once your members of your church get there, then they're going to say, what do we do? And that's when the next ministry kicks in, and that's called Salt and Light Council.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. Yeah, they are a lot of fakes, aren't they? So they've got this. They have it broken up into these 3 different organizations that each have their own kind of purpose. And so there's the Liberty Pastors, which is, I guess, part of the Remnant Alliance. And then they've got the Patriot Academy. They've got this Biblical Citizenship, and then they have the Salt and Light Council. And that works in conjunction with Citizens Defending Freedom. So they've got it's kind of like this NGO structure, which I think is very interesting, a non-governmental organization that they're infiltrating churches with.
Now, you're going to see a slide on your screen that lays all this out, and we have materials at the website that you can go to. But Salt and Light Ministries becomes a volunteer group inside your church. Your lay leader will lead that ministry. And what do? They do all sorts of things. It is a toolkit where we go and we can, for example, we can train new candidates. We can analyze precincts around your church.
Okay. So this gets to the exact point. Like if you've been following my work within state parties and what they've been doing to state parties, alarm bells should be going off. Analyzing precincts within your community. So this really what this is a part of their takeover of the Republican Party, which I have shown is an effort to make this a one-party state, to destroy the Republican Party altogether. And on Friday in the members only Q&A, which if you haven't seen it, I had Stacy Burke as a special guest on there, and we shared a social media post by a man named Mark Zaid, who was the architect of Trump's first impeachment, who also is connected, and we showed how he's connected with Mike Flynn. And in that post was dated March 17th, 2016, 3 weeks after Mike Flynn joined Trump's campaign, and he laid out their three-step plan. Their three-step plan was to fracture the Republican Party, split off the far right from the party, and then to create a new national security party in its place. A national security party replacing the Republican Party would essentially bring about a perpetual communism, because that's what communism is the replacement of liberty with security, and so this is their three-step plan. They're working on two. We've got the Republican parties are pretty well fractured. They succeeded at number one, and they still have work to do, and that's why they're doing this. And what better way than through the church? Because they've found that once they indoctrinate people through a church, they're spiritually committed. Their indoctrination is so strong, it is very, very difficult to overcome it. And I've seen that in the Michigan party. I've seen this everywhere that I've looked. The people who have they actually have a spiritual belief, a spiritual level belief, or religious level. I would say religious more than spiritual, because it's not of the Spirit of God, but it's a religious level belief that what they're doing is right. It is so hard to talk them out of it. So it's impossible to reason with them. And they've lost the ability to reason. And so what they're doing here, again, he just said, just alarm bells. He just said that part of the purpose here is for the local church to, with their help, to analyze the local precinct. And what that really means is within the Republican Party.
And determine what kind of voter turnout is happening around your area. And then we can have strategies to get people registered to vote, for example. But we do more than that. They also can help in that local community identifying issues. And that's where Citizens Defending Freedom comes in. Our organization is in your local community or in your state. And what we provide is three main products for your members to participate in and use to help shine light on things that are going nefarious things in your community, but also have a real leverage to push back against the evil that we're seeing. So for example, we have three main products. We first have an intelligence department that's human intelligence, but also we can do a deep dive in your community to find, for example, nefarious monies that are happening or nefarious people who are involved or organizations that are involved. So we have an intelligence department.
Okay, so this is Citizens Defending Freedom. He's saying that they have an intelligence department. This is, like I said, this is a military intelligence operation. This is 100% a military intelligence operation. And the object of the operation is to infiltrate Christian churches and make them into political instead of spiritual organizations, and even to make them into intelligence organizations. He just said it. This could not be any more in your grill. This is just absolutely proving everything that and affirming everything that I have said about Mike Flynn and this whole organization. Flynn is intricately involved. His pictures all over their website. He's at all of their biggest events, and this is exactly what they're doing, and they're working at destroying. I mean, I'm laughing because this is what I've been seeing and kind of intuiting. But here he is. They're telling us this is what they're doing. It's unbelievable, and this is horrible. And the horrible thing, there were 500 pastors that Flynn and Laura Logan spoke to about a month ago at a mega event that the Remnant Alliance put on, and they converted probably all of those pastors, and they're from all over the country. In every state that I've looked at, the places where the situation is the worst within the Republican Party, where the people are the most maniacal in their fighting and taking up arms and trying to destroy the party and contradicting what Trump is doing, just like in that video that I just showed from the Florida Republican Assembly. Just like even in my own backyard, Lori Skibo, who I've mentioned several times, she is definitely an operative. She's connected with the John Birch Society through Robert Owens, who is very much a John Birch Society person. She has worked for him directly, and so it ties all this stuff together, right? And Lori Skibo tonight, and I'm not going to be able to go because I'm going to go do a Wayne County poll challenger training, so that I can be a poll challenger in Detroit. But tonight in my backyard, just a half hour from my house, they're doing a ballot tracking training. So this isn't ballot chasing. At first, when I saw this, I was excited. I thought, oh wow, look, they're actually doing something to help get out the vote. No, it's not getting out the vote at all. They're tracking ballots, and they don't really even say exactly what that means. But this is not ballot chasing. They're just tracking how many ballots are going out, and they're trying to recruit people to get involved in their ballot tracking efforts, which is really a distraction from get out the vote. They don't want people doing what Joe and I were talking about doing on Monday. And if you haven't watched Monday's episode, watch especially the second half of that episode when Joe Brandis comes on, and he's just a precinct delegate, no position of authority or power within the party, and he's just taken it upon himself to do a ballot chase operations. Simple 3-step thing, and he's got it all lined up in his whole township, and he's going to help affect 5,000 votes by doing that. And this is just it's something that you can do too. So I highly recommend you watch that. But they're trying to get people not to do those things. It's like Shelby Bush talking about hand counting ballots, which there's no legal provision for in Arizona. It's like the so-called Trump clubs, which are really Flynn clubs in Florida, that are the only thing they're not doing get out the vote. They're telling people not to work the polls. They're only doing hand count training in Florida between now and the election. This is it is an in-your-face effort to counteract any get out the vote efforts, to sabotage Trump's efforts, to sabotage the Republican Party's efforts to win in just 40 days or so. So you can see the direction that this is going. I highly recommend watching the whole video. It's right up on their website, theremnantalliance.com, and you can see exactly for yourself. I'm not making any of this up. This is all from their own words. They're running an intelligence operation, military intelligence operation, to infiltrate churches, to lead pastors away from preaching the gospel and actually saving souls, and to make them into political organizations that invariably are marked. They are always marked by hatred. These people end up becoming so indoctrinated, and the fruit of the false gospel that they're preaching, which is exactly what this is. This is a false gospel, and the fruit of that is always hatred. These people are the most hateful people that I have interacted with. They're right up there. I mean, I've interacted with some pretty hateful Democrats, but they're right up there. They're right in the same club, and it's because of their brainwashing. The pastors that are going to this are becoming completely brainwashed, and this is This is an unbiblical. I've said this many times. This is an antichrist movement. What they're doing, what Flynn is doing, is an antichrist movement. And I'm going to, along those lines, I didn't prepare for this, but I'm going to find it because I know I've got it. I think I've got it. See, it was quicker in my mind than in reality. Okay, well, I'll show it next time. A lot of people have seen it already, but it was the 7 rays of light prayer that Flynn gave. That was a demonic prayer, a truly demonic prayer. It was copied pretty much word for word from a channeler who was channeling evil spirits. And I've shared it before, but anyone who would lead a large auditorium full of people professing Christians in a demonic prayer, that's essentially what they're doing here. I mean, this is along similar lines, and I think that we need to expose it, and we need to confront it, and we definitely need to protect ourselves from it. If you're in a church that is preaching gospel plus politics, I strongly recommend you step away from that church. This is something that Charlie Kirk has advocated for. He's advocated for churches like this, for churches doing this. This is so much media on the right has advocated for churches getting more involved in politics, and I strongly stand against that, and I always will. I think that churches should not get involved in politics. Christians should, but there's a huge difference. That's not the role of the church. The role of the church is to be concerned with the souls of the people that step foot in that door, and to expand their reach, to be the hands and feet of Jesus as they love their neighbors. And getting involved in politics is not the way to do that. And encouraging people to vote, sure, absolutely. Educating their people about how the Bible applies to things in the world, including politics, sure. But becoming a political organization, that's where the line needs to be drawn. And this is something that requires a lot of discernment on our part, and wisdom, and knowledge of the Word. We need to be in the Word as Christians. So I want to come back full circle and end with politics, because I think politics is good and important, and it should be secular. It should include, and I'm just going to go back to the first slide here and celebrate again the Muslim mayor of Hamtramck and Rawalamachi, and everyone else who has been working so hard to draw non-Christians into the party. And by doing that, by representing everyone, it gives those of us who are Christians who want to get involved in politics, it gives us the opportunity to witness to and to be truly the hands and feet of Christ. I mean, we should be known. Our fruit should not be hatred. Our fruit should be, true kindness and generosity and love and peace. We should be peacemakers, and we should be seen by that. And to that extent, right now, anyone on any side of any of this that is truly working to get out the vote between now and November, like, this is the time to work. This is the time to make sacrifices and to work to save our country. And that's not about getting out there and tracking ballots or hand counting ballots. Those are designed to get us away from the actual work. The work is to get out and knock on doors, to get yourself trained to be a poll worker or a poll challenger, to talk to people, have face-to-face conversations. Sitting behind a keyboard is not a very effective way to change hearts and minds and to win over voters. But knocking on their doors, picking up the phone, talking to neighbors, these are the things that are going to help us to win elections. If you're a precinct delegate, take responsibility for your precincts. Truly. You're responsible for knowing which doors are in your precinct, which of them are hardcore Democrats, which of them are hardcore Republicans, which of them are AV voters, which of them have got their ballots in. You should be chasing the ballots in your precinct. That's the work that you signed up for when you became a precinct delegate. Okay, so with that, I think we can win. This is how we win. This is what I titled, this is how we win, is by getting out there and doing the work. I think we can win, just like I showed right here. This is our path. We can do it. We can win Michigan. If we win Michigan, we win the whole shebang for Trump. And let's win for down ballot Republicans. We need to take the House. We need to take the Senate. And if you're in Arizona, vote for Kari Lake. As much as I dislike Kari Lake, I dislike her much less than I dislike Gallego. And I've talked to people who have actually worked with Gallego in the past and have described him as a longtime communist. I don't believe that is who Kari Lake is. I don't like her for various reasons. I think that she's controlled by the opposition. However, I do believe that she will vote to support Trump's judicial appointments, and that's the most important thing that the Senate can do. Senate candidates can do. So if you're in a state and you don't like the name that's on the ballot for the House of Representatives or the Senate or the state House or state Senate, what you're really voting for is for a Republican majority. And so maybe there's others in other districts that you like, and it'll give them a stronger vote if we can have a Republican majority. So all of those things are important, and we can win. We're holding us together. The Republican Party has all kinds of flaws, and it's a whole bunch of people with self-interest and flawed people with self-interest that are all moving in the same direction. It's like herding cats and without much of a shepherd. And, we can't expect Trump or anyone else to be able to save the day. We've got to move in that direction ourselves, and we have to be leaders ourselves. So you can do it. We can do it, and we can do this together. I appreciate you all being here. And until tomorrow at 3:00, I will be right back here, and it should be a good one. Thanks.